He touched peace. For the first time. Chapter 1. The Weight of Twilight. You carry something heavy tonight. It sits in your chest like a stone that has been there so long you've forgotten what breathing felt like before it arrived. The day has ended, but its echoes remain. Voices that told you who you should be, mirrors that reflected who you thought you weren't, moments when you smiled while your heart was breaking. The world grows quiet around you now. Windows glow amber in distant houses. Somewhere a dog barks once and falls silent. The ordinary sounds of evening settling into night. Yet here you are, awake in this space between day and dream, carrying questions that have no easy answers. You've learned to wear masks so well that sometimes you forget your own face beneath them. The cheerful mask at work, the strong mask with family, the together mask with friends, each one carefully crafted, perfectly fitted, hiding the raw truth of who you really are when no one is watching. Tonight, in this gentle darkness, those masks feel heavier than usual. Your skin aches beneath them. Your breath grows shallow under their weight. You find yourself longing for something you cannot name. Perhaps it is simply the freedom to be exactly as broken and beautiful as you truly are. The evening air carries the scent of cooling earth and distant rain. Somewhere in the shadows between what was and what might be, something is stirring. Something that has been waiting patiently for you to grow tired enough of pretending to finally listen. You pull the covers closer, not against the cold, but against the vastness of all you've never allowed yourself to feel. The silence deepens around you like water, and for the first time in longer than you can remember, you allow yourself to sink into it instead of fighting to stay afloat. In this drowning, something unexpected happens. You discover you can breathe underwater. You discover that what you thought was ending might actually be beginning. You discover that the heaviness in your chest isn't a stone at all. It's a seed that has been waiting in the darkness to finally break open. Chapter 2. The Child in the Well. Deep within you, there lives a child who stopped believing in magic the day someone told them their dreams were too big. This child sits at the bottom of a well, having fallen so long ago that you've forgotten they're even there. But tonight, their voice echoes up through the darkness, small and clear and impossibly brave. They remember things you've taught yourself to forget, the way clouds used to look like stories, the way rain on windows sounded like secrets, the way your heart used to race with possibility instead of anxiety, with wonder instead of worry. This child knows about the hunger that lives in your belly, not for food, but for something that feels like home. They remember when love felt like sunlight instead of negotiation, when safety meant being held instead of being invisible, when being yourself was the most natural thing in the world. You've spent years trying to silence this child. You've fed them logic when they cried for understanding. You've given them achievements when they hungered for acceptance. You've built walls around the well, thinking you were protecting them. But really, you are protecting yourself from their inconvenient truth. The truth is simple and devastating. You are still that child. Beneath every strategy and success, every defense and disguise, you are still the one who believed that love was possible, that dreams could come true, that the world was a place where someone like you could belong. That child never stopped loving you, even when you stopped loving them. They never stopped believing in your worthiness, even when you collected evidence to the contrary. They never stopped waiting for you to come back for them, to remember that they exist, to finally listen to what they've been trying to tell you all along. Tonight, their voice rises from the well like a song you used to know. It speaks of things you buried so deeply you thought they were gone forever. Your capacity for joy, your hunger for truth, your stubborn refusal to stop hoping even when hope feels like the cruelest joke of all. The child in the well holds your original face, the one you wore before the world taught you to be ashamed of it. They hold your first laugh, your deepest dreams, your wildest imagination. They hold everything you think you've lost and everything you're afraid you'll never find. Listen. Can you hear them calling your name? Not the name the world gave you, but the name your soul recognizes. The sound that makes your heart remember what it felt like to be home in your own skin. Chapter 3. The Gallery of Shames. You walk now through a corridor lined with mirrors, but these mirrors don't show your reflection. They show your secrets. Each surface holds a moment you've tried to forget. A part of yourself you've learned to hide. A truth you've buried so deep you thought it had died. Here is the mirror of your anger. not the righteous kind, but the raw, red fury that rises when you feel unseen, unheard, unloved. You've been taught that this anger makes you ugly, that good people don't feel such things, so you've swallowed it like poison, let it burn holes in your stomach, let it whisper lies about your worth. Here is the mirror of your neediness, the desperate hunger for attention, for validation, for someone to finally see you and say that you matter. You've been taught that needing makes you weak, that independence is the only acceptable strength. So you've starved yourself of connection, convinced yourself that loneliness is nobility. Here is the mirror of your sexuality, all the desires you've been taught to be ashamed of, all the longings you've learned to deny. Your body speaks a language the world has told you is dirty, wrong, too much. So you've lived like a ghost in your own flesh, disconnected from the very life force that animates you. Here is the mirror of your sadness, not the pretty kind that gets sympathy, but the ugly kind that comes with snot and red eyes and sounds that embarrass you. You've been taught that sadness is self-pity, that depression is weakness, that real strength means smiling through the pain. So you've become an expert at drowning quietly. Here is the mirror of your selfishness, the part of you that wants things for yourself, that dreams of recognition, that craves pleasure and beauty and ease. You've been taught that wanting is greedy, that good people sacrifice themselves for others. So you've made martyrdom your identity and wondered why it feels like death. Each mirror shows you a face you've disowned, a part of yourself you've banished to the shadows. But look closer. Look beyond the shame and the stories and the judgments. Look with the eyes of someone who is finally ready to come home to themselves. What if these aren't flaws to be fixed but fragments to be integrated? What if your anger is actually your power, your neediness, your capacity for connection, your sadness, your depth of feeling? What if the parts of you you've been taught to hate are actually the keys to your freedom? The mirrors shimmer and shift, and suddenly you see something new reflected back at you. Not perfection, but wholeness. Not a person without shadows, but a person brave enough to dance with them. Chapter 4. The Library of Unspoken Words. In the deeper chambers of your inner world, there exists a library where all your unspoken words are kept. Shelves stretch from floor to ceiling, heavy with volumes of things you meant to say but didn't, truths you felt but never voiced, love you carried but never expressed. Here are the words you should have said to your mother before she stopped listening. Here are the words you should have said to your father before he disappeared behind his newspaper. Here are all the I love yous that died in your throat, all the I'm sorries that felt too small for the size of your regret. This library holds every conversation you practiced in your head, but never had the courage to speak aloud. Every boundary you should have drawn. Every dream you should have defended. Every time you said fine when you meant I'm falling apart. And every time you said nothing when someone asked what was wrong. The books are written in invisible ink, made from tears you never shed and screams you never released. But tonight, as you move through these silent stacks, the words begin to glow. Your unexpressed truth has a luminescence all its own, and it's been waiting patiently for you to finally see it. You pull a volume from the shelf, and it falls open to a page of words you wrote with your heart but never spoke with your mouth. I am afraid you don't love me enough to stay if you really knew me. The admission cuts through you like light through darkness, sharp and clean and somehow relieving. Another book opens to, I pretend I don't need anyone because I'm terrified of discovering that no one needs me. The words pulse with the rhythm of your hidden heart, the one that beats beneath all your careful composure. Another page reveals, I am angry that I have to earn love when everyone else seems to deserve it simply by existing. The sentence burns with a fire you've kept banked for so long you forgot it was still smouldering. Page after page of unspoken truth, years of swallowed words, decades of deferred honesty, all of it here, waiting for you to finally give it voice, to finally let it breathe in the space between your heart and the world. You realize that your silence hasn't protected anyone, not them, not you. It has only made you a stranger to yourself, a ghost haunting your own life. These unspoken words aren't dangerous, they're medicine. They're the antidote to the poison of pretending. The library grows brighter as you acknowledge each volume, each page, each carefully hidden truth. Soon the whole space is glowing with the light of your own authenticity, and you understand that speaking your truth isn't about being heard by others, it's about finally being honest with yourself. Chapter 5. The Theatre of Roles. You find yourself now in a grand theatre where all the roles you've played are performing simultaneously on different stages. Each character wears your face, speaks with your voice, but represents a different way you've learned to be in the world. On the main stage, the people pleaser takes centre stage, contorting themselves into impossible shapes to earn applause. They smile until their face hurts, agree until they forget their own opinions, give until they have nothing left but resentment. The audience loves them, but you can see the exhaustion in their eyes, the way they bow so low they disappear. Stage left. The perfectionist performs a complex dance where every step must be flawless, every gesture precise. They've never learned to stumble gracefully, so they freeze when they can't get it right. The music plays on, but they stand motionless, paralyzed by the possibility of making a mistake. Stage right. The invisible one performs a magic trick, making themselves disappear so completely that sometimes even you forget they exist. They've mastered the art of taking up no space, needing nothing, being no trouble to anyone. Their greatest achievement is being forgettable. In the balcony, the angry one pounds against the walls of their cage, fury radiating like heat from a fire. They've been locked away because their emotions are too big, too messy, too inconvenient for polite society. But their rage burns bright and true, fueled by years of injustice and dismissal. Below in the orchestra pit, the sad one weeps beautiful tears that no one sees. They compose symphonies of sorrow, operas of loss, but they've learned to cry quietly so as not to disturb the show. Their music is the most honest sound in the theatre. Backstage, the real you sits in a dressing room, watching all these performances through a mirror. You're exhausted from directing all these characters, from managing all these masks, from maintaining all these illusions. You wonder who you would be if you weren't so busy being who everyone else needs you to be. The real you has been understudying for all these roles, waiting for your turn to take the stage. You know all the lines, all the movements, but you've been told that your authentic self isn't theatrical enough, isn't polished enough, isn't enough. But tonight something shifts. You realise that this theatre belongs to you. You're not just the actor in these dramas. You're the director, the producer, the audience. You have the power to change the show, to write new scripts, to let different characters take the spotlight. What if, instead of performing for others' approval, you performed for your own joy? What if, instead of hiding your realness backstage, you let it take centre stage? What if the role you've been rehearsing your whole life is simply the role of being yourself? The curtain falls on all the old performances, and in the silence that follows, you hear the sound of your own heartbeat. It's time for a new show to begin. Chapter 6. The Garden of Forgotten Dreams. Beyond the theatre, through a door you never noticed before, lies a garden that time has forgotten. This is where all your abandoned dreams have taken root, growing wild and strange in the darkness of neglect. Vines of possibility climb walls of doubt. Flowers of ambition push through cracks in the concrete of practicality. You walk the overgrown paths, recognizing dreams you buried so long ago you thought they had died. Here grows the writer you wanted to be, before someone told you that words don't pay bills. The petals of that dream have fallen, but the roots run deep and new buds are forming in the moonlight. There, tangled in thorns of fear, blooms the lover you were afraid to become, the one who feels too much, loves too fiercely, trusts too completely. You were told this kind of love was naive, dangerous, destined for heartbreak. So you learned to love carefully, measuredly, safely. But safe love isn't love at all. It's just management. In the shadowy corner grows your dream of being an artist, a creator, someone who makes beautiful things just because beauty matters. This dream has been pruned so severely by practical concerns that it looks more like a stick than a tree. But even sticks can bloom if given enough light and water. Near the forgotten fountain sits your dream of adventure, of seeing the world, of living fully instead of carefully. This dream has been contained in such a small pot for so long that its roots have become bound, twisted back on themselves. But dreams are remarkably resilient. They can survive almost anything except complete abandonment. You kneel beside each dream, brushing away the weeds of should and can't and too late. You water them with tears you didn't know you were crying, not tears of sadness, but tears of recognition, of homecoming, of grief for all the time you spent away from yourself. As you tend to these forgotten dreams, something miraculous happens. They begin to respond, to straighten, to reach toward whatever light they can find. They don't need you to have all the answers or a perfect plan. They just need you to remember that they exist, to acknowledge that they matter, to stop pretending they're dead when they were only sleeping. Some of these dreams may be too damaged to fully revive. Some may have grown into something different than what you originally planted. But all of them contain seeds of truth about who you really are beneath all the roles and rules and reasonable compromises. The garden whispers secrets in the language of growing things, that dreams don't have expiration dates, that it's never too late to begin again, that the heart knows what it needs to flourish even when the mind insists on drought. You realize you've been the gardener all along. You've had the power to tend or neglect, to nurture or abandon, to remember or forget. Tonight, you choose to remember. Tonight, you choose to tend. Tonight, you choose to believe that something beautiful can still grow from the soil of your authentic desires. Chapter 7. The Cave of Echoes. Deeper still into your inner landscape, you discover a cave where all your unheard voices live. These are the echoes of everything you've ever said to yourself in the privacy of your own mind. The cruel criticisms, the impossible standards, the relentless comparisons that have shaped you more than any external voice ever could. The cave amplifies everything. Every "you're not good enough" becomes a chorus. Every "who do you think you are" becomes a symphony of self-doubt. Every "you'll never be able to" becomes an opera of limitation. These voices have been your constant companions, so familiar that you mistake them for truth, so persistent that you forget they're just echoes of old wounds. But as you move deeper into the cave, something shifts. The acoustics change. You begin to hear not just the harsh voices, but the gentle ones that have been drowned out by all that internal noise. The voice that says you're learning instead of you're failing. The voice that says you're brave instead of you're foolish. The voice that says you matter instead of you're nothing. These kinder voices have been there all along, but they speak in whispers while the critical voices shout. They offer comfort while the harsh voices demand perfection. They extend grace while the punishing voices withhold love until you've earned it. You realize that this internal dialogue isn't a democracy. You don't have to give equal time to every voice that speaks up. You are the curator of your own inner conversation. You get to choose which voices deserve amplification and which deserve to be questioned, challenged, or simply ignored. In the deepest part of the cave, you discover the source of all the echoes, a small chamber where your original voice lives, the one that spoke before the world taught you to doubt yourself. This voice is quiet not because it's weak, but because it has no need to shout. It knows its own truth. This voice remembers who you were before you learned to be afraid of yourself. It speaks in the language of your deepest knowing, your truest feelings, your most authentic desires. It doesn't traffic in shoulds and shouldn'ts. It simply is, like water flowing downhill, like flowers turning toward light. As you listen to this original voice, the echoes in the cave begin to change. The harsh criticisms soften into questions. The impossible standards relax into invitations. The relentless comparisons transform into celebrations of your unique path. You understand now that you've been in conversation with yourself your whole life, but you've been letting the wrong voices lead the discussion. Tonight you choose a new primary speaker. Tonight you choose to amplify the voice that has always known your worth, even when you forgot to listen. The cave begins to glow with a warm, steady light, not the harsh fluorescence of judgment, but the gentle radiance of self-compassion. For the first time in longer than you can remember, the echoes in your mind sound like home. Chapter 8. The Council of Selves. In a circular chamber lit by candles that never burn down, you find yourself sitting at a round table with all the different aspects of yourself. This is the Council of Selves, where every part of your psyche has a voice, a vote, a right to be heard. The wounded child sits to your right, knees drawn up, eyes wide with the old hurts that never quite healed. They speak in a voice barely above a whisper about all the ways the world has been unsafe, unkind, unloving. They hold your capacity for tenderness, but also your deepest fears of abandonment. The protective adult sits across from you, arms crossed, eyes scanning for danger. They've appointed themselves as your guardian, but somewhere along the way protection became prison. They speak in absolutes. Never trust, never risk, never hope too much. Their love shows up as control. The wise elder sits to your left, quiet and patient, hands folded in their lap. They've seen enough seasons to know that everything changes, enough storms to know that everything passes. They speak rarely, but when they do, their words carry the weight of deep knowing. The creative spirit bounces in their chair, ideas bubbling up like champagne. They see possibilities everywhere, beauty in everything, potential in places others see only problems. They speak in colours and metaphors and dreams that dance just beyond the edge of practical. The shadow self sits in the dimmer light, holding all the parts of you you've tried to disown. They know your anger, your selfishness, your capacity for destruction. But they also hold your power, your passion, your refusal to be diminished. They speak truths that make you uncomfortable and necessary. For too long, you've let these different aspects of yourself battle for dominance, each one trying to silence the others, each one convinced they know the only right way to live. The wounded child demands safety above all else. The protective adult insists on control. The wise elder counsels patience. The creative spirit cries for expression. The shadow self demands recognition. But tonight, instead of choosing sides, you listen to each voice without judgment. You hear the wounded child's need for gentleness. You acknowledge the protective adult's desire to keep you safe. You feel the wise elder's call for perspective. You honor the creative spirit's hunger for beauty. You face the shadow self's demand for authenticity. What if they're all right? What if they all have something essential to offer? What if the goal isn't to silence some voices and amplify others, but to find a way for all of them to work together, each contributing their gifts when they're most needed? You realize that you're not just one thing, one way of being, one fixed identity. You're a whole community of selves, each with their own wisdom, their own purpose, their own right to exist. The art is not in eliminating the parts you don't like, but in learning to be a good leader to all the parts of yourself. The counsel continues through the night, voices weaving together in a conversation that has been waiting your whole life to happen. For the first time, you're not trying to fix or change or improve yourself. You're simply trying to understand, to integrate, to make peace with the beautiful complexity of who you really are. Chapter 9. The Mirror Lake. At the heart of your inner world lies a lake so still it looks like polished glass. This is the mirror lake where the surface reflects not just your face but your soul. You approach its shores with trembling steps, knowing that what you see here will be the truth you've spent a lifetime avoiding. The water is dark, not with murkiness but with depth. As you kneel at its edge, your reflection appears slowly, like a photograph developing in a dark room. But this reflection shows you not as you appear to the world, but as you truly are beneath all the masks and roles and careful presentations. Here is your face without the smile you wear to make others comfortable. Here are your eyes without the sparkle you manufacture to hide your sadness. Here is your body without the posture you've arranged to take up less space, to seem smaller, safer, less threatening. This reflection shows your scars, not just the ones on your skin, but the ones on your spirit. The places where love was withheld, the places where trust was broken, the places where you learned to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold you. But as you look deeper, you see something else. You see the light that has never gone out, even in your darkest moments. You see the strength that has carried you through everything that should have broken you. You see the love that persists even when you forget how to love yourself. The reflection shows you your contradictions without judgment. You are broken and whole. You are wounded and healing. You are afraid and brave. You are lost and found. You are human, beautifully, messily, perfectly human. As you gaze into this mirror lake, ripples begin to spread across the surface. With each ripple, you see different versions of yourself. The child you were, the adult you became, the elder you might be. You see yourself in moments of triumph and defeat, in seasons of joy and sorrow, in times of connection and isolation. All of these versions are true. All of them are you. The lake doesn't ask you to choose which self is the real one. It simply reflects them all with equal compassion, equal acceptance, equal love. You realize that you've been afraid of this reflection because you thought it would show you something terrible, something unlovable, something that needed to be fixed or hidden or changed. Instead, it shows you something sacred, the irreducible truth of your existence, the unique expression of life that you are. the unrepeatable gift that you bring to the world simply by being. The great psychologist Carl Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But tonight, by this mirror lake, you discover something even more profound. Everything that you've rejected about yourself can lead you to an understanding of your wholeness. The lake holds your reflection with infinite tenderness, asking nothing of you except that you see yourself as you truly are, not perfect but precious, not without flaws but never without worth, not finished but always enough. As you rise from the water's edge, you carry this image with you, not as a burden of truth but as a gift of recognition. You know now what your face looks like when it's not performing, what your eyes look like when they're not hiding, what your soul looks like when it's finally allowed to be seen. Chapter 10. The Room of Forgotten Joys. Hidden behind a door marked with symbols you'd forgotten how to read, you discover a room that glows with golden light. This is where all your forgotten joys have been waiting. The simple pleasures you abandoned in your rush toward adulthood, the innocent delights you discarded in your pursuit of sophistication. The room smells like birthday cake and fresh rain, like new books and your grandmother's perfume. It sounds like laughter that comes from your belly, like music you dance to when no one is watching, like the silence after a good cry when everything feels possible again. Here is the joy you felt the first time you realized you could read, when letters became words and words became worlds. Here is the ecstasy of running so fast you thought you might take flight, of spinning until you were dizzy with the sheer intoxication of being alive in a body that moved. Here is the wonder you felt when you discovered that you could make people laugh, that your words had the power to transform someone's whole day. Here is the magic of believing in things that adults said were impossible, that trees had feelings, that clouds were messages, that love could conquer everything. Here is the satisfaction of creating something with your own hands, a drawing that captured exactly what you saw in your mind, a song that expressed exactly what you felt in your heart, a story that transported you to exactly where you wanted to be. These joys didn't disappear because they weren't important. They were buried because someone convinced you they weren't serious enough, mature enough, productive enough. You learned to be ashamed of the things that made you happiest, to hide the parts of yourself that were most alive. But joy doesn't age. It doesn't become obsolete or inappropriate or silly. It simply waits, patient as a cat in sunlight, for you to remember that happiness is your birthright, that pleasure is not a luxury but a necessity, that delight is not childish but essential. As you move through this room, touching each memory of joy, something miraculous happens. They don't crumble from age or fade from neglect. Instead, they pulse with life, ready to be reclaimed, ready to be reintegrated into your current existence. You realize that somewhere along the way, you made joy conditional. You decided you could only be happy when you'd achieved enough, earned enough, become enough. You turned joy into a reward instead of recognizing it as a state of being, a way of moving through the world, a choice available to you in each moment. The room whispers secrets about the nature of happiness, that it doesn't require perfection, that it doesn't depend on circumstances, that it lives not in some future achievement, but in your capacity to notice beauty, to feel gratitude, to be present to the miracle of your own existence. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. But tonight, in this room of forgotten joys, you understand that individuation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to be someone else. You collect these joys like shells on a beach, filling your pockets with the treasures of your own authentic happiness. You know now that joy is not earned but remembered, not achieved but reclaimed, not found but recognized as something that was never actually lost. Chapter 11. The Archive of Unfinished Stories. In the quietest corner of your inner world, you find an archive filled with stories that were never completed. These are the narratives you started but never finished, the relationships that ended in the middle of a sentence, the dreams that were interrupted by practical concerns, the conversations that were cut short by fear or pride or the simple passage of time. The shelves stretch endlessly upward, filled with volumes of unfinished business. Here is the letter you never sent to your first love, explaining why you disappeared without saying goodbye. Here is the apology you never gave to your best friend after that fight that ended everything. Here is the thank you note you never wrote to the teacher who believed in you when no one else did. These incomplete stories live in your body as tension, as regret, as the peculiar ache of unresolved energy that wants to move but doesn't know where to go. They whisper to you in quiet moments, reminding you of all the ways you've left things undone, unsaid, unfelt. You pull a volume from the shelf, and it opens to the story of your relationship with your father, a narrative that ended not with resolution, but with his death, leaving chapters of understanding unwritten, conversations unhad, forgiveness unexpressed. The story hangs in the air between you, heavy with all the love that was never spoken, all the hurt that was never healed. Another book tells the story of the business you almost started, the career you almost changed, the life you almost lived. It's written in the conditional tense. What might have been, what could have happened, what would have unfolded if you'd been braver, more confident, more willing to risk failure for the possibility of fulfillment. These unfinished stories aren't failures. They're evidence of your humanity, your courage to begin even when you couldn't see the ending, your willingness to love even when you couldn't guarantee love in return. They're proof that you've lived, that you've tried, that you've been willing to step into the unknown even when your heart was breaking. As you read through these incomplete narratives, you realize something profound. Not all stories are meant to have endings. Some stories are meant to live in the space between beginning and conclusion, in the eternal present tense of possibility, in the fertile uncertainty of what might still unfold. Jung wrote about the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to hold paradox, to live with tension, to find meaning in incompleteness. Tonight, surrounded by these unfinished stories, you understand that your life doesn't need to be a perfectly plotted novel, with all conflicts resolved and all questions answered. Some chapters will remain unwritten, some characters will exit before their story arc is complete, some plot lines will hang forever in suspension. And this isn't a flaw in your story. It's what makes it real, what makes it human, what makes it yours. You close the books gently, but you don't put them away. Instead, you arrange them where you can see them, honouring them not as failures but as evidence of your willingness to begin, to risk, to love without guarantees. They are the proof that you have lived not just safely but fully, not just completely, but courageously. Chapter 12. The Observatory of Patterns. High above all the other rooms and chambers of your inner world, you climb a spiral staircase to an observatory, where the dome opens to reveal not stars, but the patterns of your own life spread out like constellations against the darkness of forgetting. From this vantage point, you can see the recurring themes of your existence, the lessons you've been learning over and over, the relationships you keep attractating, the choices you keep making despite promising yourself you'd choose differently next time. Here is the pattern of abandonment, how you leave before you can be left, how you create distance to avoid the pain of being rejected, how you protect yourself from loss by never fully arriving in the first place. The pattern spirals through your life like a golden thread, connecting moments separated by years but linked by the same fear. Here is the pattern of perfectionism, how you set impossible standards and then punish yourself for being human, how you mistake excellence for worth, how you choose the safety of not trying over the risk of not succeeding. This pattern weaves through your days like a tight wire, cutting into your joy, restricting your movement. Here is the pattern of caretaking, how you give away your energy to earn love, how you solve other people's problems to avoid your own, how you make yourself indispensable to feel valuable. This pattern creates a web that catches others but traps you at its center. But from this elevated perspective, you can also see something that was invisible from ground level. These patterns aren't random. They're not character flaws or personal failures. They're adaptations, strategies your psyche developed to help you survive experiences that might have otherwise broken you. The pattern of abandonment protected you from the deeper wound of being unwanted. The pattern of perfectionism shielded you from the shame of being inadequate. The pattern of caretaking gave you a sense of control in situations where you had none. These patterns served you once. They were wise responses to difficult circumstances, creative solutions to impossible problems. The issue isn't that you developed them, it's that you've outgrown them. What once kept you safe now keeps you small. What once helped you survive now prevents you from thriving. Jung spoke of the eternal return, the way we keep circling back to the same lessons until we finally learn them. But tonight, from this observatory, you see that the return isn't really eternal. It's a spiral, not a circle. Each time you encounter the same pattern, you're a little higher, a little wiser, a little more capable of choosing differently. You realize that awareness is the first step toward transformation. You can't change what you can't see, can't heal what you won't acknowledge, can't choose differently if you don't recognize the choice points where patterns begin. The constellations of your patterns shine with new meaning, not as evidence of your failure to change, but as maps showing you exactly where the work needs to be done, exactly what wants to be healed, exactly how your soul is trying to grow. From this height, you can see that your patterns aren't your prison, they're your path. They're showing you the way home to yourself. One repeated lesson at a time, one circular journey at a time, one opportunity for consciousness at a time. Chapter 13. The Garden of Second Chances. At the edge of your inner landscape, where your personal unconscious meets the collective wisdom of all humanity, you discover a garden where nothing ever truly dies. This is the Garden of Second Chances, where every ending is also a beginning, every failure is also a teaching, every loss is also a preparation for something new. The garden is tended by a figure you recognize but can't quite name. Perhaps it's your future self. Perhaps it's your highest wisdom. Perhaps it's simply the part of you that has never stopped believing in renewal. They move between the plants with infinite patience, watering what needs moisture, pruning what needs release, planting what wants to grow. Here grows the relationship you thought was over forever, its roots deeper than the hurt that seemed to kill it. Here blooms the dream you thought you'd missed your chance to pursue, its flowers more beautiful for having weathered seasons of dormancy. Here flourishes the career you thought you'd destroyed with that one mistake, stronger now for having survived the storm. The gardener explains that this place operates by different laws than the ordinary world. Here, time moves not in a straight line but in seasons. Here, endings are composted into beginnings. Here, what appears to be death is often just dormancy, the seed's way of gathering strength for its next emergence into light. You walk among plants you recognize as parts of your own story that you thought were finished. The friendship that ended in betrayal has sent up new shoots, not the same as before, but something that might become even more beautiful for having been broken and remended. The workshop rings with the sound of transformation, metal on metal, fire on stone, the rhythmic hammering that shapes formless suffering into tools for living. Each strike of the hammer is intentional, precise, guided by wisdom that knows how to honor pain while refusing to be imprisoned by it. The smith explains that wounds are not mistakes to be corrected, but raw materials to be refined. Every injury contains within it the seeds of a strength you didn't know you needed. Every loss teaches you about what truly matters. Every betrayal reveals the value of loyalty. Every rejection clarifies your understanding of belonging. This doesn't mean that pain is good, or that suffering is necessary for growth. It means that since pain is inevitable in a human life, the question becomes, what will you make from it? Will you let it rust into bitterness, or will you bring it to the forge where it can be transformed into wisdom? You realize that your wounds have been your teachers, not your enemies. They've shown you depths of feeling you didn't know you possessed. They've revealed reserves of strength you never knew existed. They've connected you to the great human experience of vulnerability and resilience. The smith hands you tools forged from your own transformed pain, a sword of truth sharp enough to cut through illusion, a shield of compassion strong enough to protect the tender parts of your heart, a key of wisdom capable of unlocking doors you didn't even know were closed. These tools are yours now, created from the very experiences that once threatened to destroy you. You understand that healing doesn't mean returning to who you were before you were hurt. It means becoming someone who can carry their wounds as sources of strength rather than sources of shame. Jung wrote about the wounded healer, the person who has been broken and mended, who can guide others through the territory of suffering because they have mapped it with their own feet. Tonight, in this workshop, you recognize yourself as such a healer, equipped with tools no one else could have forged for you. Chapter 15. The Chamber of Choices. In the center of your inner world stands a chamber with doors leading in every direction. Each door represents a choice you could make, a path you could take, a way of being you could embody. Some doors are familiar, you've opened them many times before. Others are strange, marked with symbols you don't recognize but that call to something deep in your soul. The chamber exists outside of time, which means every choice you've ever faced is still available here. The door marked courage stands beside the one marked safety. The path of speaking your truth runs parallel to the road of keeping the peace. The entrance to following your heart opens directly across from the gateway to meeting expectations. You realise you've been in this chamber your whole life, but you haven't always recognised it as a place of power. Instead, you've often felt like choices were being made to you rather than by you, that circumstances, other people, or your own unconscious patterns were choosing your direction while you followed helplessly behind. But tonight, in this illuminated space, you see clearly that you are always choosing. Even when you feel powerless, you are choosing how to respond to powerlessness. Even when options seem limited, you are choosing which limitations to accept and which to challenge. Even when you feel like a victim of your circumstances, you are choosing what story to tell about what's happening to you. The chamber shows you patterns in your choosing. There's the door you've opened repeatedly, the choice to prioritize others' comfort over your own authenticity. There's the path you've avoided consistently, the road that leads toward your deepest dreams but requires risking failure, judgment, or rejection. You see how many of your choices have been driven by fear disguised as wisdom, by trauma masquerading as prudence, by old programming posing as current preference. You've chosen safety over growth so many times that you've forgotten growth was an option. You've chosen familiar pain over unfamiliar possibility so consistently that you've mistaken limitation for destiny. But you also see evidence of your courage scattered throughout the chamber. Moments when you chose love over fear, truth over comfort, growth over safety. These choices glow with a different quality of light, pulsing with the energy of alignment, of authenticity, of soul-deep rightness. The chamber whispers one of its greatest secrets. You don't have to choose perfectly to choose powerfully. You don't need to know the outcome to make the choice that honours your deepest truth. You don't have to guarantee success to select the path that aligns with your values. Carl Jung understood that consciousness is about choice, becoming aware of the unconscious forces that have been making decisions for you so that you can begin to choose deliberately, consciously, authentically. Tonight in this chamber, you claim your power as the author of your own experience. You approach a door you've never opened before, one marked with symbols that seem to shift and change as you look at them. You don't know where this door leads, but you recognize the feeling it evokes, the trembling excitement of stepping into unknown territory, guided only by your own inner compass. Your hand reaches for the handle, and you realize that this moment, this choice to choose consciously, is the beginning of everything that wants to unfold in your life. The door opens not to reveal a destination, but to show you that you are the destination, that coming home to your own authentic choosing is the journey itself. Chapter 16, The Sanctuary of Solitude, beyond the chamber of choices through a door marked only with the symbol of a single flame. You discover a sanctuary that exists in perfect silence. This is your place of solitude, not the loneliness that aches with absence, but the wholeness that rests in your own complete presence. The sanctuary is simple, stone walls that feel ancient and protective, a single window that shows not the outside world but the depths of your own soul, a chair that seems designed specifically for your body, for your need to finally sit still and stop running from yourself. Here, all the noise falls away. The voices that tell you who you should be, what you should want, how you should live. They cannot enter this space. The expectations that have driven you, the comparisons that have tortured you, the judgments that have shaped you, they wait outside like weather you no longer need to let in. In this silence, you discover that you are not empty when you're alone. You are full of thoughts and feelings and dreams that belong only to you, full of wisdom that has been accumulating quietly while you are busy listening to everyone else, full of love that doesn't need an object, peace that doesn't require circumstances, joy that exists simply because you exist. The sanctuary shows you that solitude is not selfishness, but self-care. It's not isolation, but integration. It's not running away from the world, but running toward yourself, toward the center of your own being where all your scattered pieces can finally come home. You realize how afraid you've been of this silence, this aloneness, this encounter with yourself without distractions or buffers or roles to play. You've filled every quiet moment with noise, every empty space with activity, every pause with productivity because you were terrified of what you might find if you actually stopped and listened. But tonight, in this sanctuary, you discover that what you were afraid of finding was exactly what you needed to find. Your own voice, your own rhythm, your own truth. The person you are when no one is watching isn't someone to be ashamed of, but someone to be celebrated, honoured, cherished. The sanctuary teaches you about the difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness is the pain of feeling disconnected from others. Solitude is the joy of feeling connected to yourself. Loneliness drains your energy. Solitude restores it. Loneliness makes you feel like something is missing. Solitude makes you feel complete. In this space, you understand why every wisdom tradition speaks of the importance of solitude, of retreat, of the deliberate choice to step away from the world's noise and into your own silence. It's not escapism. It's the most courageous thing you can do because it requires you to face yourself without distraction. Jung spoke of the need for individuals to differentiate themselves from the collective, to find their own path rather than simply following the crowd. Tonight, in this sanctuary, you experience what he meant, the profound relief of no longer needing to be anyone other than who you are. You settle into the chair that was made for you, in the silence that belongs to you, in the solitude that heals you. For the first time in longer than you can remember, you have nowhere to go, nothing to prove, no one to please. You're exactly where you need to be, exactly as you need to be, exactly who you need to be. The flame that marks this sanctuary burns steadily, neither growing nor diminishing, requiring no fuel but your own presence. It illuminates nothing but yourself, and that is enough. That is everything. Chapter 17. The Theatre of Dreams. As the night deepens and your journey through the inner landscape continues, you find yourself in a theatre where the only performance is the one your unconscious mind creates each time you sleep. This is where your dreams live when you're not dreaming them. A space where symbols dance and meanings merge and your soul speaks in the language only sleep can translate. The theatre is unlike any you've seen before. The stage shifts and changes like water, solid one moment and flowing the next. The seats are filled with every person who has ever appeared in your dreams, some familiar faces from your waking life, others strangers who feel more real than people you see every day. On the stage, your most recent dreams replay themselves, but now you can see what you missed while you were sleeping. The anxiety dream about showing up unprepared wasn't really about the test or the presentation. It was about your fear of being seen as inadequate, your terror of being exposed as not enough. The recurring dream about trying to find your way home through endless corridors wasn't about being lost in space. It was about being lost in yourself, about the journey back to your own authenticity through the maze of who you've pretended to be. The nightmare about being chased wasn't about external danger. It was about running from parts of yourself you've been unwilling to face, aspects of your psyche that grow more threatening the longer you refuse to acknowledge them. But you also see the beautiful dreams, the ones that left you feeling inexplicably hopeful upon waking. The dream about flying wasn't just wish fulfillment. It was your soul reminding you of your capacity for transcendence, your ability to rise above circumstances that seem to pin you down. The dream about meeting a wise teacher wasn't just fantasy. It was an encounter with your own deeper wisdom, your inner guide trying to get your attention through the only medium available when your conscious mind was finally quiet. Carl Jung devoted his life to understanding dreams because he recognized them as letters from the unconscious to the conscious mind, not random neural firing, but meaningful communications from parts of yourself that have something important to say. Tonight, in this dream theatre, you begin to understand the language your soul speaks when you're sleeping. It's a language of symbols and metaphors, of emotions and images, of truths too large for words and insights too deep for rational thought. You realize that your dreams have been trying to help you all along, offering solutions to problems you can't solve with your waking mind, showing you possibilities you can't see with your daylight vision, healing wounds that logic alone cannot touch. The theatre begins to glow with a soft, ethereal light, and you understand that the boundary between dreaming and waking is more porous than you thought. The wisdom your dreams offer doesn't have to stay in sleep. It can inform your conscious choices, guide your waking actions, illuminate your path forward. As you prepare to leave this theatre, you make a promise to pay attention to your dreams, to honour them as messages from the wisest part of yourself, to let them guide you toward wholeness in ways your conscious mind alone could never achieve. Chapter 18. The Gallery of Ancestors. Beyond the theatre of dreams, you discover a gallery lined with portraits that seem to shift and shimmer in the candlelight. These are not photographs, but something deeper. Soul prints of everyone who came before you, whose lives and choices and struggles created the stream of existence that eventually became you. Here hang the faces of your ancestors, both those you knew and those who lived before memory. Your grandmother, whose hands taught you that love could be kneaded into bread and stirred into soup. Your grandfather, whose silence spoke of wars both outer and inner, whose survival became your foundation. But these portraits show more than just your biological lineage. Here are the ancestors of your spirit, the artists and mystics and rebels who carved out space for people like you to exist, the women who fought for your right to speak, the men who modelled emotional depth in a world that demanded emotional shallowness. Each portrait pulses with the unfinished business they passed down to you, not as burden, but as inheritance. The dreams they couldn't fulfill, the words they couldn't speak, the healing they couldn't complete, the love they couldn't express. All of it flowing forward through time until it reached you, asking to be resolved, completed, transformed. You realize you carry more than your own story. You carry the accumulated hopes and hurts of generations. The way your mother learned to hide her anger is the way her mother learned to hide hers, stretching back through a lineage of women who were taught that their fury was too dangerous to show. The way your father learned to bury his tenderness is an echo of his father's lessons, reverberating through a line of men who were told that feeling deeply was a luxury they couldn't afford. But tonight, in this gallery, you see that these patterns don't have to continue. You are not just the inheritor of ancestral wounds, you're the potential healer of them. Every time you choose consciousness over reactivity, love over fear, truth over survival, you send healing backward through the generations. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious as the repository of human experience. All the joys and traumas and wisdom accumulated by our species stored in the deep layers of the psyche. Tonight you feel yourself connected to this vast inheritance, responsible not just for your own healing, but for the healing of the whole human story. The portraits begin to glow brighter, and you hear whispers of encouragement from voices across time. They tell you that your struggles are not yours alone, that your victories belong to all of them, that your healing ripples both forward and backward through the fabric of existence. You understand now that individuation, becoming fully yourself, is not a selfish act but a service to the whole. Every person who breaks free from unconscious patterns, who chooses love over fear, who lives authentically instead of safely, creates more possibility for everyone who comes after. The gallery fills with a warm golden light, and you feel held by a love larger than personal affection, the love of the human family, the support of all those who walked before you, the gratitude of all those who will walk after you. You are not alone in your journey toward wholeness. You are part of a great procession of souls, each one adding their light to the collective illumination, each one making the path a little clearer for those who follow. Chapter 19. The Bridge Between Worlds. At the far edge of your inner landscape, where the personal unconscious meets the collective, where your individual story joins the universal narrative, you find a bridge that spans the space between who you've been and who you're becoming. The bridge is made of material you can't identify. It seems solid as stone but flows like water, ancient as starlight, but new as this moment. Each step forward requires you to let go of something you thought you needed to carry. Each footfall echoes with the sound of old identities falling away. As you walk across this bridge, you feel yourself shedding layers like a snake releasing its skin. The identity of the wounded child falls behind you, not forgotten, but no longer defining you. The mask of the people-pleaser dissolves in the wind, its lessons integrated, its compulsion released. The need to be perfect, the fear of abandonment, the hunger for approval that has driven so many of your choices, all of it remains on the other side of the bridge, honoured for how it served you but no longer needed for where you're going. With each step you feel lighter but not diminished, more yourself but not less connected, clearer about who you are but more open to who you might become. The bridge is teaching you about the paradox of growth, that you must leave parts of yourself behind to become more fully yourself. Halfway across, you pause and look back at the landscape you've travelled through tonight. The Cave of Echoes, the Garden of Forgotten Dreams, the workshop of wounds, the sanctuary of solitude, all of it is still there, still part of you, but no longer overwhelming you. You've made peace with your complexity, found integration in your contradictions. You look forward toward the other side of the bridge, and you can't see exactly what awaits you there. The future remains mysterious, full of potential that hasn't yet crystallized into form. But you're no longer afraid of this uncertainty. You've learned to trust the process of becoming, to faith in your capacity to navigate whatever emerges. The bridge reminds you of something Carl Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Tonight, you choose to become someone who carries their past as wisdom rather than weight, someone who faces their future with curiosity rather than fear. As you complete your crossing, you feel a shift that's both subtle and profound. You're still you, the same soul in the same body, but something fundamental has changed. You've remembered who you are beneath all the stories and strategies and roles. You've reclaimed your authentic self from the safe houses where you hid it. The bridge begins to glow behind you, becoming a pathway of light that connects all the parts of yourself you've explored tonight. You understand that this integration isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing process, a daily choice to remain conscious, connected, and authentic. Chapter 20. The Dawn of Recognition. You stand now in a place that exists beyond metaphor, beyond the geography of inner exploration. This is the moment of recognition, when all the pieces of your journey come together in a single, illuminating understanding that changes everything and nothing, that reveals what was always true but never before seen. The recognition comes not as a thought, but as a feeling, not as a revelation, but as a remembering. You remember what you knew before the world taught you to forget, that you are enough, exactly as you are, that you are worthy, not because of what you've achieved, but because of what you are, that you belong not to any particular place or group, but to existence itself. This isn't the false positivity that demands you pretend your struggles don't exist. This isn't the spiritual bypassing that asks you to transcend your humanity. This is the bone-deep knowing that your struggles and your beauty, your wounds and your wisdom, your failures and your triumphs are all part of the same sacred story. The story of a soul learning to be human. You feel the presence of everyone who has ever felt lost, broken, unworthy, alone. You understand that your pain is not unique, it's universal, which doesn't diminish it but somehow makes it holy. You are not alone in your struggles because struggle is part of the human condition, part of what connects you to every person who has ever lived. But you also feel your uniqueness, the particular way you experience joy, the specific flavor of your love, the individual path your soul has chosen to walk toward wholeness. You're universal and unique, common and extraordinary, ordinary and miraculous all at once. The recognition brings with it a quality of peace you've never experienced before. Not the peace of having all your problems solved, but the peace of accepting that problems are part of life. Not the peace of having all your questions answered, but the peace of being comfortable with mystery. Carl Jung spent his life mapping the territory of the human psyche, and his greatest discovery was perhaps the simplest, that wholeness doesn't mean perfection, it means integration. It means making peace with your shadow as well as your light. It means embracing your humanity instead of trying to transcend it. Tonight you touch this wholeness for yourself. You feel what it's like to be completely present with all of who you are, the wounded and the healed, the fearful and the brave, the lost and the found. You're not fixed because you were never broken. You're not complete because completion is a process, not a destination. As dawn approaches in the outer world, you carry this recognition with you back into your ordinary life. You understand that the journey you've taken tonight isn't separate from your daily existence. It is your daily existence, seen clearly for the first time. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice authenticity. Every challenge is an invitation to choose consciousness. Every moment is a chance to remember who you really are beneath all the roles and reactions and learned responses. The peace you've touched tonight doesn't depend on external circumstances staying the same. It lives in your capacity to remain present, aware, and compassionate with yourself and others, regardless of what unfolds. Chapter 21. The Return. As the first hints of dawn touch the edges of your awareness, you begin your return journey through all the territories you've explored tonight. But this return is different from the way you came. You carry with you now the integration of all you've experienced, the wisdom of all you've understood. You pass again through the sanctuary of solitude, but now you know it's not a place you visit, it's a state of being you can access anywhere, any time you need to remember your wholeness. The silence lives within you now, available whenever the world's noise becomes too much to bear. You walk again through the workshop of wounds, but now you see your scars as evidence of healing rather than signs of damage. Each wound tells a story of resilience. Each hurt points toward a strength you didn't know you possessed. You're not despite your brokenness, but because of how you've learned to mend. You revisit the garden of forgotten dreams, but now these dreams don't feel lost. They feel dormant, waiting for the right season to bloom again. You understand that dreams don't die. They transform, evolve, adapt to the soil of who you've become. The chamber of choices no longer feels overwhelming but empowering. You see that every moment offers you the opportunity to choose who you want to be, how you want to respond, what energy you want to bring to your life. Choice is not burden, but gift. The gallery of ancestors feels like a warm embrace now. You carry their love with you. Their struggles have become your wisdom. Their unfinished business has become your purpose. You're both individual and part of something larger, both unique and connected. As you move through each space, you notice that they're all still part of you. The integration you've achieved doesn't mean these different aspects of yourself disappear. It means they work together now, like instruments in an orchestra, each contributing their unique sound to the symphony of your being. The journey back feels lighter, because you're no longer carrying the weight of pretending to be someone you're not. You're no longer exhausted by the effort of maintaining masks that never quite fit. You're no longer afraid of being seen because you've finally seen yourself. The return journey teaches you something essential about healing. It's not about getting back to who you were before you were hurt. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be, informed by your experiences but not defined by them, shaped by your struggles but not limited by them. You emerge from this night voyage not as someone who has been fixed, but as someone who has been remembered to themselves, remembered to their wholeness, remembered to their inherent worth and beauty and belonging. Chapter 22. The Morning Gift. As dawn breaks fully now, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, you carry with you a gift from the night's journey. Not something you can hold in your hands, but something you can hold in your heart. It's the gift of self-compassion, of recognition, of coming home to yourself after a long exile. This gift doesn't make your life perfect. Your challenges don't disappear. Your relationships don't magically heal. Your circumstances don't automatically change. But everything is different because you are different, not in your essential nature, but in your relationship to that nature. You understand now that healing is not a destination but a direction. Wholeness is not a goal to achieve, but a truth to remember. Peace is not something you find outside yourself, but something you recognize within yourself, something that was there all along waiting to be uncovered. The gift you carry is the knowing that you are enough. Not because someone told you so, not because you've earned it, not because you've achieved some standard of worthiness, but because enoughness is your birthright, your natural state, the truth of who you are before any story gets layered on top. You are enough in your strength and in your vulnerability. You are enough in your clarity and in your confusion. You are enough in your joy and in your sorrow. You are enough in your success and in your failure. You're enough because you exist, because you're part of the great web of being, because your particular expression of life has never existed before and will never exist again. This knowing doesn't make you arrogant or complacent. It makes you humble before the mystery of existence, humble before the complexity of human experience, humble before the courage it takes to be fully yourself in a world that often asks you to be someone else. The morning gift you carry is also the understanding that everyone else is on their own journey toward this same recognition. Everyone else is struggling with their own version of feeling not enough, not worthy, not belonging. This knowledge doesn't make you responsible for fixing others, but it does make you more compassionate, more patient, more understanding. You see now that the work of becoming conscious is not selfish, but necessary. Every person who does their own healing work, who faces their own shadows, who learns to love themselves makes it easier for others to do the same. Your wholeness is a gift, not just to yourself, but to everyone whose life you touch. As you prepare to enter your day, you carry with you the peace of knowing that no matter what happens, You have within you everything you need to navigate it with grace. Not because you're perfect, but because you're complete, complex, contradictory, beautifully human, and absolutely enough. Epilogue. The continuing journey. The night voyage ends, but the journey continues. What you've discovered in these hours of exploration becomes the foundation for days and weeks and years of conscious living. The territories you've mapped in your inner landscape become familiar places you can return to whenever you need guidance, comfort, or simply the reminder of who you really are. You understand now that consciousness is not an achievement, but a practice. Wholeness is not a destination, but a way of travelling. Peace is not a place you arrive at, but a quality of presence you can cultivate moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by breath. The wisdom you've gained tonight doesn't make future challenges easier, but it makes them meaningful. You know now that every difficulty is an invitation to go deeper. Every conflict is an opportunity to choose love over fear. Every moment of struggle is a chance to practice the compassion you've learned to extend to yourself. Carl Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Tonight, you've tasted that privilege. You've glimpsed your authentic self, touched your inherent wholeness, remembered your essential worth. Now the invitation is to live from this knowing, to make choices from this awareness, to love from this fullness. The night journey has shown you that healing is possible, that integration is available, that peace is your birthright. These aren't just beautiful ideas, but lived experiences, real possibilities, actual states of being you can access and embody and share with the world. As you move forward from this moment, you carry with you the light of your own recognition, the warmth of your own compassion, the strength of your own resilience. You know now that you're not walking alone. You're supported by your own wisdom, guided by your own inner knowing, loved by your own heart. The journey toward wholeness is never finished, because wholeness is not a static state, but a dynamic process. You will continue to grow, to learn, to discover new depths within yourself. You will continue to face challenges that invite you to remember who you are. You will continue to have opportunities to choose consciousness, to practice love, to embody the truth you've touched tonight. But you will never again be lost in the way you once were, because you now know the way home, not to a place outside yourself, but to this sanctuary within yourself, not to a perfected version of who you think you should be, but to the whole, complete, absolutely enough person you have always been. The night gives way to day, the inner journey yields to outer living, but the recognition remains. You are loved, you are worthy, you belong. Not because of anything you've done or achieved or become, but because of what you are, a unique, irreplaceable, absolutely sacred expression of the great mystery of existence. Rest now in this knowing. Let it soak into your bones, settle into your cells, anchor itself in your heart. You have touched peace for the first time, and it will never fully leave you again. The journey continues, but you continue it from a place of wholeness, moving not toward completion, but from completion, carrying the light of your own recognition into whatever tomorrow may bring. Sleep well, dear traveller, you are home.